right, so welcome to this re-recording of a webinar on strategic reading in an AI-mediated research environment. I'm Christina Quinn, the director of CSU Rates, and these are some of the things that we will be talking about. I'll just give some reminders on upcoming events. There's grounded reflection, which if you want access to those materials, you need to just reach out to CSU Rates and we can give you a link to that folder where you can have the reflection, but it's also will be on the slides as well. We talked about the value of reading for writing. We talked about Gen AI use in writing and reading for writing. We talked about reading to know and also synthesizing. But some of the upcoming webinars are Writing for Speed. This is one of our longstanding, most popular workshops on how do you separate out generative writing from editing. And we're talking about it specifically in an era of AI, because I think if you're using AI for any kind of editing, it's going to shift and change a little bit of how it is that we practice. Upcoming webinars for the Right to Publish series are the openings and conclusions and sticking the landing. And that's a webinar on looking at the structure of your article or your chapter and identifying where in paragraphs key information needs to go and where in sections of your chapter or your article key information would need to go. That's the prime real estate area. Developing your own style and distinctiveness of style, which is crucial in an era of AI so that you don't actually sound like AI. And then we'd have a couple upcoming one-day retreats for graduate students. One's in person on April 18th, and then the last virtual one day is on May 2nd. Hope you can join us. If you're not already attending Sprint and Write or Show Up and Write, please just check the website because those sessions are available, and we have folks who are in person or in virtual spaces looking to have you come and write with them. The handout that I mentioned, we'll look at these questions up close in a moment, but just note, again, this will be in the list of handouts or in the shared drive. So please email us if you did not register and you don't automatically get an email with this content. The reflection that we did was looking at what types of documents do we read for our research, because there's a range of them. It's not just articles, right? There may be research reports, there may be book chapters, there may be actually reviews, book reviews, there may be any number of types of documents that you're reading. So listing those out helps you identify what types of information is going to be coming from what types of genres or what types of publications and documents that you're reading. Drafting a statement about the value of reading for your professional development and research writing can be super helpful because that's what helps you guide your mind. Why is reading valuable? What does it do for you? And if it's important to your research and professional development, as I'm going to argue that it is, then articulating why it's valuable to you is helpful because you're unlikely then to just offload the reading to someone else. You're actually going to make more time for reading and place it within your schedule. And you will also build out some practices that help protect or kind of make the most of your reading as you're building your expertise in your career. Tracking reading is really helpful for you to also track what it is that you know. Very few of us have that kind of memory or mind where we can just pull in everything that we've read and remember it word for word and integrate it somehow into our knowledge base. So being able to track it and having some systems on ground is really helpful. And then what challenges do you face in reading and writing? We talked a fair amount about that, and there were various types of challenges, but there are some that are pretty common across all researchers and graduate students through emeritus faculty, by the way. What techniques or tools have you tried? And then what do you currently incorporate as part of your reading practice? So, and no one, I think, in the seminar actually had a Gen AI software that they had fully integrated or trusted. That was a big question and concern about trust and on the outputs of AI currently. So in the reflection, there were some shared insights. We shared about the drafting, we shared about the tracking, and we shared about the AI. So let's talk about the value of reading. Ultimately, the value of reading for research in your scholarly writing will have to do with you being able to explain both the breadth of your field the big picture, but then also the depth of your topic and being able to geolocate your topic within your field. And reading allows for you to do that. It's not just writing. You need to have a breadth of knowledge and a kind of a connection to what has come before for you to be able to articulate what it is that you are currently doing now, in order for you then also to give some insight of where it is that others might be able to build off of what it is that you're contributing. If at any place along that spectrum, if you're not clear what has come before, if you're not clear how to ground what it is that you've done in relation to that work, and if you're not clear then what the value is going forward, if you feel uncertain about making those claims, reading is going to be your friend, and going back and reading some of the literature will be really helpful. Ultimately, what that does is allows for you to, quote unquote, wield the field. I just love this expression. I share it out all the time. This comes from Professor Scott Yengel, who was at Michigan State University and I think is now at Vanderbilt. And when I was a graduate student and he did our methods course, he said, reading and doing your literature review, this is what's going to allow for you to wield the field. And it allows for you also to do so with grace and style and expertise. And that is hard won. We all know that the Olympics make athletes look like it's just easy, whatever the sport is, they make it look so smooth and easy. And we also know that that takes a tremendous amount of practice and skill development and just strength. So in that sense, reading is part of your career-long relationship with the work that you're doing to develop your expertise. Creates a spaciousness of mind. It allows for you to see both the big picture as well as to be able to know what to narrow down and how to focus through all of the big picture. What do you pull in specific for your readers to know and understand about? You don't have to tell them everything. You just have to tell them enough so that they can focus on the ideas and what you're sharing with them. I'm keeping this pretty broad, by the way, because we've got folks from all different disciplines, but it works. That advice works across disciplines. There are some common reading challenges that writers face, and this is also across disciplines. When to read versus when to write. How do you do that? Do you do reading before writing or writing before reading, or how does that work? And I'm going to say it's kind of a back and forth and back and forth and back and forth kind of continual kind of process. How to read well, to be insightful and smart and keep track of the details. We'll talk about some strategies for that. How to read a lot in a short period of time. There's also some strategies for that. We'll talk about a 3-part reading model, and then how to track what you've read over a long period of time. And I'm going to recommend a matrix, a very simple kind of structure, but I think that it's the structure that we need, our minds need, to be able to track the key documents, the information that's important for us to know. If you think about going up to defend your work, if you think about exams, what you need to know, and how nimble you want to be with those ideas. Again, you think about strength and kind of being able to wield your field. How do you track that? So when do you read for writing? I think that you could treat reading and writing kind of as a single surface in a dynamic process. At the writing retreats, for example, for CSU rates, we often spend a lot of time reading as writers, right? So anything goes. You don't have to just have fingers to the keyboard and be writing during a writing retreat. Reading is essential. It's so funny. We prioritize the output right now as scholars so much more than we prioritize the input. And so let's just think, particularly in the era of AI, what are we bringing in so that we become the knowledgeable subjects, the individuals who then can wield the AI that we're using? We know that AI is only going to be as good and helpful as the person who is using it, the human in the loop, who can assess the quality of the output and also determine its accuracy and whether it belongs in a document that goes forward as part of a thesis, a dissertation, an article for publication, a proposal for funding. So we're the people who are determining the quality of that. And we also know that reading is essential, right? It's just the bedrock of what we do. We don't write for other people not to read it. We write for people to read what it is that we've written. It helps if you schedule and prioritize your kind of reading writing time. And it may be that on some days of the week that you need to read before you do your writing. It may be that you know that you need to do some reading in the evenings so that you can write in the morning. Think strategically about how much time you need. The more that you can immerse and kind of set yourself up for digging in deep, the easier it will be for you to recall, for you to work with the material and ideas that you have. I think that means, particularly if you're learning a new field, allowing for yourself to dig in with 2 to 3 hours. If you can, set aside a fair amount of time for reading. It doesn't have to be all day. In fact, it shouldn't be. You don't want to tip into exhaustion. And just think about, like, where could you fit that time into your current schedule? If you're in a lab and you've got a busy lab schedule, when do you fit reading in? Same thing with writing. We know that reading and writing, again, they kind of go hand in hand, right? And so when do you find that time to include the reading? Logging your reading and writing tasks is essential to you making progress. So making sure that you know what you have read is awesome. It's just key. I can't tell you the number of times that even I, knowing what I know, I'm like, have I read this article? Oh, I don't know. Where are my notes? How can I log it? If I don't find it in my log, it seems like it doesn't exist. And then I start reading and I'm like, this is pretty familiar. So we don't always do it perfectly, but it's really helpful if we do it with importantly, and we can track what's important. So it just becomes part of what you do as a daily process and practice. And then the pleasures of reading and writing are in their brief, frequent, low stress, and highly rewarding encounters, right? AI programs for literature reviews. Again, this is not a technical webinar. We are not talking about all these different types. We have experimented with through CSU Rights. Both Kimmy, the assistant director, and I have been working with various AIs in the background, just trying to see if they're helpful, how they're helpful, what we might be able to do with them. I know Kimmy, one that's not on here is Notebook LM, by the way, but we have worked with Perplexity. We've given webinars and talked about that, and Elicit and Research Rabbit and Semantic Scholar. So you can experiment with programs for literature reviews. What I found largely is that I'm given articles that seem to be relevant, but when I get to it are less so. So the quality of currently what's being drawn out for my purposes has not been high quality. We're going to have increasing problems, I think, over the next few years with given the rates of AI slop, particularly in certain fields. If you are in biomedical sciences or computer science, some of the ecological and environmental sciences have been hit pretty hard with AI slop. So you'll be needing to dig through any of the syntheses, the summaries that you get from AI programs, and just making sure that those are using genuine articles that have genuine citations themselves. But it may be better for us to think about using AI programs in a strategic way. That would be our being able to find good articles that are trusted, that we've vetted the references, we perhaps know or have known about the scholar whose article we're working with as a trusted scholar in the past, and that we can then feed into certain programs our own lists. Zotero is a great system for being able to do that as well. If you're looking for review tools, though, I highly recommend reaching out to our librarians at CSU. So Rochelle Raymer, Anna Frary, we've got librarians there who can help you identify some programs and tools, AI tools, that would be useful. If you're currently using an AI tool, my recommendation is to not use it blindly, but to be strategic in how you're engaging with it. Know, why it is that you're using that AI tool, what you identify as its kind of key outputs. It's what are its strengths, and then also what are its limitations. Right now, I think that if you're going to be strategic and accurate with the AI outputs, that means you're also reading and reviewing not only the AI output and any summaries or syntheses or reports that it's giving you of a group of texts, but then you're also doing your due diligence and then reviewing those groups of texts. You have to be the human in the loop and identify the accuracy of the output. We had a conversation earlier in the live webinar, and some of the conversation hinged on how accurate or inaccurate some of those summaries were, and that it might actually just be easier and more time conserving. Say it'll save you time to do your own readings and your own summaries. Currently, I don't know about that. If you're looking for a big gather on a particular topic, it, I think some of these tools can be quite helpful. Again, go to the libraries, ask for some support and guidance in identifying tools and how you might use those tools. My just general reminders, and this comes from the literature review workshop from yesterday, is just making sure that a reminder that you are the human in the loop, that you are using AI programs to supplement the work that you're doing, not to kind of take over or substitute for that work, that you're documenting all the AI programs that you're using, that you know the program's name, you know the version that you're using, the tasks that you're asking it to perform. If you're not currently logging your AI use, your prompts, how you're using it for each project, start a spreadsheet, put in your date. It can be really simple. What's the date? What's the program that you're using? What's the prompt that you're using for what project, for what purpose? Just put it all out there. That way you know that when you go to submit either to your committee or to the graduate school or to a funding agency or to a journal, that you have a record of how you have engaged with AI for your research so that you can then disclose and acknowledge all citations and all use of AI. So reading to know, I think this is one of the key elements that we've talked about with building strength as a researcher, that you're reading your foundational text in your field for your research project. For foundational texts, I would not offload those to AI. I would not ask them to do quick summaries unless they're highly complex and you're willing to kind of dig through and kind of ask AI, what does it see as being kind of portions of the text, or this, can it summarize it for you? And then you go through and read it, and is that clear? Or is it, do you agree? And I would say that given the nature of expertise and the quibbling and arguments over very simple, subtle changes in terminology that happen at the expert level of fields, AI is not there right now to summarize and be able to give you an accurate kind of re-representation of all those foundational texts for you. So you're going to be the one who then also compares. So if you're using AI to get some details and some knowledge about a text, you also want to make sure that you are reading the original and either agree or can disagree with it. Read them slowly, return to them often. Plan to skim any of those ancillary texts or the supplemental texts. But again, thinking about if you're just skimming for information, so you just kind of know what's in there, consider what your knowledge base is of those ancillary texts. How well can you speak to them? How well can you articulate what those who have researchers and scholars who have come before you, what they have done and why it's significant and related to your work. I would not rely on AI in this endeavor either to do all of that summary work for you, in part because if you think about your ability to wield the field, you are then doing a summary of AI's summary. And that is not going to I think, help you feel like an expert. And some of this, it really is like, do you own what it is that you've done? And I've had some emails and queries from graduate students in particular, and some concerned faculty this year. It's the first time it's happened where folks are going up for exams or folks are looking at a kind of important moment with a project, and they're concerned about their AI use prior to this and whether they actually know what it is that they think that they know. So I think you want to be confident. So using AI strategically within your own reading process and practices will help you be confident in your ability to wield the field. Here's a 3-step critical method for reading. And when I say critical, it's not being negative. You're really kind of thinking strategically and critically about what you're reading. So pre-reading is crucial. Give your mind a kind of a background to what to expect. Articles are complex oftentimes. They have detailed information. They have lots of graphs and figures, perhaps. They may be arranged in unique ways that you haven't seen before. Let your mind know what it's in for, and just kind of pre-read that article, that chapter, the section that you're going to be working on in your reading session, and then go through and read. If you can, this second step should be without highlighters, without pens, without, kind of marking up the text. If it's in Zotero and you're working on a PDF, you may have tagged it, you may have the content kind of general themes down, but as you're reading it, just let your mind consume what's in there. Just like let it read through it. And if there are places where you know that you don't understand something, which is very common, right? We don't automatically understand everything that we've read in the field. Some of it is beyond our current capacities because we have yet to understand other kind of key elements that would build to our understanding of that particular topic in that particular article. So those kinds of details might take a little bit more time for us to learn how to process them, but that's really important for you to know. That's a great place for you to say, I'm reading it. I think I understand. Wait, I don't understand this. Don't get bogged down. Just continue till you are comprehending again, because at some point that will happen as well. And then you can go back in this third step. In this third step, you can take notes. You can summarize the article itself. Within that, you can identify connections to other texts. You can also, and we'll talk about a two-part system. I'm going to recommend doing this by hand or some system, right, that allows for you to learn from what it is that you're reading and pull in the content for the summary, the kind of key points on the left-hand side in a double entry system, and then on the right-hand side of a document. Then what are your questions? What don't you know? What don't you yet understand? What are the terms that you need to look up? What are your opinions? What are your insights? So what that does is it allows for you to have a record and an understanding that you have read something, that you understand the content. Here's what they have said. And then on the other side, on the right-hand side in the right column, you have what you have said. What's of interest to you? Why is it important? And if you keep a document like this for every one of your kind of primary, your kind of foundational texts, you will understand your field broadly so much better. The kind of the breadth of it, you will be able to wield that so much better. The same thing too then with anything that is specific to your topic, that is directly related to the conversation that you're having. Maybe you are pushing against someone's argument. Maybe you are articulating something that is slightly different than what it is that they have done and said. Being able to know from the content what it is that they said specifically and how your ideas or how your work differs or shifts those ideas is really important to have you articulated. If you do this, think about then sitting down and writing. You are going to be much more kind of skilled or facile with the material. It'll flow much more easily. You'll be able to draft out your ideas in whatever section you're working on much more easily. If you work on an IMRAD structure, the methods you probably know, but then setting up the background and the context and doing your literature review, you would want to have all of this information kind of set up for you so that you're not hunting for literature that kind of backs up and kind of connects to what you're doing, but you actually have a knowledge of where your work is already fitting. This is particularly important for those of you who come in on grant projects where the project and work that you're doing might not have originally been your own design, your own idea. Cornell method, some of you may be familiar with this, and it's great for lectures. It's less so, I think, for if you're looking at reading notes. Some of you might be able to use something like this as a Cornell method for your reading notes. And if you have and it's working for you, that's great. But it's usually geared towards learning concepts and ideas rather than being able to identify what's useful for your own work to integrate later. I think a project matrix, after you're done taking your notes, if you transfer those notes to a project matrix, can be also really helpful in that digesting of the material so that you understand how to engage with the work that's come before. You can use a Word document for sure. You could use an Excel spreadsheet, which I think is probably better. I use this with my graduate students and other projects where we put in the texts, we put in the citations, and then we identify what's useful, what's of interest, how we're going to be using it in the project. If it's for me in doing conference presentations or other things like that, I will often include something with the author's network or reviews of their work so that I can have a conversation with them at a later date. So you can use a project matrix for a literature review beyond a specific project itself. And again, if you use Excel or if this is digital, not handwritten, you can then pull from that Excel spreadsheet and add to other projects. So it may be that you're using a particular citation and it's what's of interest to your review in multiple ways. However, note that you might also have to go back through since it's not the same article that you're writing or the same chapter or the same document. You would want to go through and just what's of interest? Why would you want to be citing this particular piece? And so it gives you an opportunity, again, to go back and do another read through. A matrix allows for you to consolidate your notes. It allows for you to organize your materials in a searchable manner. It allows for you also to capture your thoughts as you read for recalling later. Again, like if you're doing that 3-part system, which I don't recommend for every single document that you're reading, but the ones that you have to know really well, that process will allow for you to digest them and be able to articulate what you've read really well. That's capturing your thoughts as you read to recall later. You could do a matrix including your foundational text, the ones that you've spent time with, but then also the ones that you've skimmed and you just know are relevant to your work. You can include those as well. And then you can just kind of pull in kind of quickly as you've skimmed through those and kind of said, yes, this is relevant just because it's within this area. And this seems to be what's important and what I want to recall later. So note that you can capture those thoughts as you move through. You document what you need from a source. And then it helps you also identify writing styles and academic work that you might want to model that you're like, this is a really great role model. Although somebody in the earlier session mentioned, this is also what I don't want to role model. So you can identify good writing and include that as like, oh, go back to this as a model for good writing. Put it in your matrix. It might look something like this. This is from way back when I did a panel project and talk at Modern Language Association. But again, note, it's super helpful to be able to identify who I want to be having conversations with. For me, I have the file located at so I can find it again. So if you have it in your Zotero or a link or connection, you can get back to it. Thinking about Zotero, we have researchers at the university and librarians who can help you with the basics on that. I highly recommend reaching out. We have Zotero Zen recordings and other things for CSU rates that if you're looking for some recorded guidance, the webinars should be posted on the website. And if not, just please reach out and I'm happy to send you those links. Let's talk about synthesizing. This is the next step. If you have read a lot, you've taken a lot of notes, how do you synthesize that and pull it all together within your document and when you're writing about it? And because there's a lot. We had a couple folks who talked about their use of Obsidian earlier, and we have done some webinars where we've included advice and information about using Obsidian. We're not going to do that here, but just they're mixed reviews, right? Some people have found it really, really helpful for their thinking, and I think it may have to do with discipline-specific use. Which discipline are you in? Does it help you kind of organize your thoughts? Does it help you bring in multiple texts in a strategic way versus others who found it not so helpful? But ultimately, what you want, again, is for you to have this kind of virtuous circle or cycle of lifelong learning. Obsidian, based on the Zettelkasten processes, are ways for you to have read and capture and clarify, comprehend and communicate and keep building off of those ideas. So presumably if you can hang on to your Obsidian and keep building it out to be able to do synthesizing of your ideas and various topics, it could be quite helpful. It's not, of course, the only way that you would do it. And let's talk about what a synthesis is. And this is great guidance from my colleagues at Pepperdine University, where I attended a session that they were talking about what they do with synthesis in the literature review. And so just a reminder that a synthesis accurately reports information from a variety of sources, that it makes sense of those sources and helps readers understand them in greater depth. So you're explaining what you understand about all of these other sources, giving it to your reader, and that it reveals to the reader where the information from sources might overlap. Where does it connect? Where is it important? Because it may be that these, 3 or 4 different sources or different articles are addressing elements within the field, but it's not clear how they all connect. It's your job to pull them all of their arguments together, or all of whatever they're talking about in their data, or very specifically how it relates to your work. And the key is always that it's going to connect in some way to furthering your own descriptions, explanations, contexts, arguments, and furthering the ideas and understandings in the field, right, through your own writing. If we're looking at paragraph synthesis, if you want to put together an entire paragraph, which I highly recommend pulling it together, can you describe what all of those articles have in common? Can you kind of pull together the different ways of what they say that seems to all link up, and add perhaps details that are needed, and conclude with what does it mean? Are they all on the same page? Are they all, quote unquote, in agreement on the same page? Or are they doing something different? So this comes from Lori Beth Einfeld, and she has this meal system which is helpful for paragraph development of a synthesis of an idea. Again, what's the main idea, the claim or central idea of that paragraph? You're the person who writes that as a statement related to your own work. This is not geared towards their work so much as it's geared towards the work that the ideas that you're putting forward in relation to your own work that brings in their work. So what have they done that is relevant to your work? Examples and evidence from those analysis or interpretation of their work may be necessary, and then linking back to that main claim. That's a kind of a nice, tidy paragraph structure for doing a synthesis. I would say if you're doing summaries at the end of your reading sessions for each article, you should be able to pull together pretty easily a number of articles into looking at and seeing, this is the main idea and what all of these represent in this particular topic or idea that I'm talking about. This is how they demonstrate the viability or the information or the research that's come before, the ideas that have come before. And then this is why it's important or significant to our work here. And so when you link back to that main claim, you're not restating the ideas verbatim, or you're not just restating it as a fact. You're then restating it in a way that builds towards your next ideas or towards looking at the viability of your own work. So you could see something, an example here in The Speed of Trust, one thing that changes everything from the Free Press. I'm going to read through this paragraph so we can get a sense of it. But while it may come naturally for us to think of trust in terms of character, it's equally important we also learn to think of it in terms of competence. Think about it. People trust people who make things happen. They give the new curriculum to their most competent instructors. They give promising projects or sales leads to those who have delivered in the past. Recognizing the role of competence helps us identify and give language to underlying trust issues we otherwise can't put a finger on. From a line leader's perspective, the competence dimension rounds out and gives trust its harder, more pragmatic edge. So we have the main idea about competence. We have examples here of what they do with it. And then you could just imagine this being sources right here. And then competence, what it helps you identify, and then how you're building off of this, right? And so it allows for you to see the development of an idea. We take it as a paragraph, a single unit of thought, but when you're synthesizing and pulling together lots of ideas, this is how that holds together. Synthesis level at a synthesis at a sentence level means that you're pulling multiple sources into one sentence. And so we can see an example of that here, where we're looking at how life satisfaction, for example, involves finding meaning in multiple areas of one's experience, such as work or family. And then you can see multiple sources brought together about life satisfaction, work, family, experiences. And so that's really helpful for you to look through your own sources and see where are things consolidated. We kind of take it for granted in our research reading, but as you're reading to learn how to write better, pay attention to it. Another reason why there's a little bit of a caution here in using AI syntheses, part because you don't have that original kind of text. AI is not designed to just give you the blocks and kind of replicate text in that way. It breaks it down, and then it, based on predictive patterns, kind of recreates for you. But it can't do it for accuracy in exactly this way. So note that you have, again, those multiple sources in one specific place. All right, let's move forward. Ultimately, my reminder to you is that you must be the primary synthesizer and the author of your own work. You're the human in the loop. So this is just a reminder of, you know, we have numerous examples now of AI being used in ways that uh, that, that humans have missed being the human in the loop and move forward as experts in the field while demonstrating they're actually not. They're giving over their expertise to a large language model and to falsify perhaps not even real references in this case. So don't be that person. Make sure that you are always doing your due diligence and bringing through in an AI saturated world, bringing through your own reading of the texts and using AI in ways that, again, supplements or kind of supports your own work, but doesn't take over it. All right. So my parting encouragement is take what you've learned today and put it into practice, explore what's best for you, leave the rest, share widely with exuberance. And when you do, please give us a shout out. We appreciate it. And until we meet again, may your writing and your reading be brief, frequent, low stress, and highly rewarding. And reach out if you have any questions. You can reach out at Colorado State or CSU Rates at colorostate.edu. Thanks so much.